Are you ready to continue? Chapter 33, A Rat Who Knows Her Name. Mig had climbed the dungeon stairs and was preparing to open the door to the kitchen when the rat spoke to her. May I detain you for a moment? Mig looked to her feet and then to her right, to her left and her right. Down here, said Roscuro. Mig looked at the floor. Gosh, she said, but you're a rat, ain't you? And didn't the old man just warn me as such? Beware the rats, he said. She held up the tray so high so that the light from the candle shone directly on Roscuro and the golden spoon on his head and the blood-red cloak around his neck. There's no need to panic, none at all, said Roscuro. As he talked, he reached behind his back, and using the handle, he raised the soup spoon off his head, much in the manner of a man lifting his hat to a lady. Gore, said Meg, a rat with manners. Yes, said Roscuro, how do you do? My papa had him some cloth much like yours, Mr. Rat, said Meg, red like that. He treated me for it. Ah, said Roscuro, and he smiled a large, knowing smile. Ah, did he really? That is a terrible story, a tragic story. Reader, if you will pardon me, we must pause for a moment to consider a great and unusual thing, or portentous thing. That great and unusual portentous thing is this. Roscuro's voice was pitched perfectly to make its way through the tortuous path of Mig's broken-down cauliflower's ears. That is to say, dear reader, Miggery Sow heard perfect and true every single word the rat Roscuro uttered. Look at it. Let's see. So there's Roscuro with his spoon hat, and this is Miggery Sow. You have known your share of tragedy, said Roscuro to Mig. Perhaps it is time for you to make the acquaintance of triumph and glory. Triumph, said Mig, and glory? Allow me to introduce myself, said Roscuro. I am Chiaroscuro. Friends call me Roscuro. And your name is Miggery Sow. And it is true, is it not, that most people simply call you Mig? Ain't that the thing? Shouted Mig. A rat who knows my name. Yes, Miss Miggery Sow, my dear, I do not want to appear too forward too early in our acquaintance, but may I inquire, am I right in ascertaining that you have aspirations? What do you mean, aspirations? Shouted Mig. Miss Miggery, there is no need to shout, none at all. As you can hear me, so I can hear you. We two are perfectly suited, each to each other. Roscuro smiled again, displaying a mouthful of sharp, yellow teeth. Aspirations, my dear, are those things that would make a serving girl wish to be a princess. Gore, agreed Mig. A princess is exactly what I want to be. There is, my dear, a way to make that happen. I believe that there is a way to make that dream come true. You mean that I could be the Princess P? Yes, your highness, said Roscuro, and he swept the spoon off his head and bowed deeply at the waist. Yes, your most royal Princess P. Gore, said Meg. May I tell you my plan? May I illustrate for you how we can make your dream of becoming a princess a reality? Yes, said Meg, yes. It begins, said Roscuro, with yours truly and the chewing of a rope. Mig held the tray up with one small candle burning bright, and she listened as the rat went on, speaking directly to the wish in her heart. So passionately did Roscuro speak, and so intently did the serving girl listen, that neither noticed as that napkin on the tray moved. Nor did they hear the small mouse-like noises of disbelief and outrage that issued from the napkin as Roscuro went on unfolding, step by step, his diabolical plan to bring the princess to darkness. End of book the third. So that means we'll start book the fourth. Yep, book the fourth. recalled to the light. Chapter 34, Kill 'em even if they's already dead. Ooh, that's a scary sounding chapter title. Reader, you did not forget about our small mouse, did you? Back to the light. That was what Gregory whispered to him when he wrapped Despereaux in his napkin and placed him on the tray. And then Mig, after her conversation with the squirrel, carried the tray into the kitchen. And when she saw Cook, she shouted, "It's me, Miggery Sow, back from the deep downs." "Ah, lovely," said Cook. "And ain't we all relieved?" Mig put the tray on the counter. Here, here," said the cook. "Your duties ain't done. You must clear it." "How's that?" shouted Mig. "You must clear the tray," shouted Cook. She reached over and took a hold of the napkin and gave it a good shake. And Despereaux tumbled out of the napkin and landed right directly, plop, in a measuring cup full of oil. "Ah!" said the cook. "A mouse in my kitchen, in my cooking oil, in my measuring cup. You, Mig, kill him directly." Mig bent her head and looked at the mouse slowly sinking to the bottom of the glass cup. "Poor little Missy," she said, and she stuck her hand into the oil and pulled him out by his tail. Despereaux, gasping and coughing and blinking at the bright light, could have wept with joy at his rescue, but he was not given the time. "Kill him!" shouted the cook. "Gore," said Meg. "All right." Holding Despereaux by the tail, she went to get the kitchen knife. But the mouse tail, covered as it was in oil, was slick and difficult to hold onto. And Mig, in reaching for the knife, loosened her grip, and Despereaux fell to the floor. Mig looked down at the little bundle of brown fur. "Gore," she said, "that killed him for sure." "Kill him even if he's already dead," shouted the cook. "That's my philosophy with mice. If they're alive, kill them. If they're dead, kill them. That's the way to be certain of having yourself a dead mouse, which is the only kind of mouse to have." "That's some good sophisy. That is, kill them even if they're already dead." "Hurry, you cauliflower-eared fool," shouted Cook. "Hurry." Despereaux lifted his head from the floor. The afternoon sun was shining through the large kitchen window. He had time to think how miraculous the light was, and then it disappeared and Mig's face loomed into view. She studied him, breathing through her mouth. "Little Missy," she said, "ain't you going to skedaddle?" Despereaux looking for a long moment into Mig's small, concerned eyes, and then there came a blinding flash, the sound of metal moving through the air as Mig brought the kitchen knife down, down, down. Despereaux felt a very intense pain in his hindquarters. He leapt up and into action. Reader, he scurried. He scurried like a professional mouse. He zigged to the left. He zigged to the right. "Gore," shouted Mig. "Missed him." "Ain't that a surprise," said Cook, just as Despereaux scurried under a crack in the pantry door. "I got the little Missy's tail, though," said Mig. She bent over and picked up Despereaux's tail and held it up, proudly displaying it to Cook. "So," shouted the cook, "what good will it do us when the rest of him is disappearing into the pantry?" "I don't know," said Mig, as she braced herself, as Cook advanced upon her, intending to give her a good clout to the ear. "I don't know." "Look it. Poor little Despereaux. And there's his tail. I'm wondering if Mig meant to miss him." Let's read one more. Chapter 35. It's called The Knight in Shining Armor. Despereaux was pondering the reverse of that question. He was wondering not what he would do with his tail, but what he would do without it. He was sitting on a bag of flour high atop a shelf in the pantry, crying for what he had lost. The pain in his hindquarters was intense, and he wept because of it. But he also cried because he was happy. He was out of the dungeon. He had been recalled to life. His rescue had happened just in time for him to save the Princess P from the terrible fate that the rat had planned for her. So Despereaux wept with joy and with pain and with gratitude. He wept with exhaustion and despair and hope. He wept with all the emotions of a young small mouse who had been sent to his death and then been delivered from it in time to save his beloved, and that what he could feel. Reader, that mouse wept. And then he lay down on the sack of flour and slept. Outside the castle, the sun set and the stars came out one by one, and then they disappeared and gave way to the rising sun, and still Despereaux slept. And while he slept, he dreamt. He dreamt of the stained glass windows and the dark of the dungeon. In Despereaux's dream, the light came to life, brilliant and glorious, in the shape of a knight swinging a sword. The knight fought the dark. And the dark took many shapes. First, the dark was his mother uttering phrases in French, and then the dark became his father beating the drum. The dark was Furlough wearing a black hood and shaking his head no. And the dark became a huge rat smiling a smile that was evil and sharp. The dark, Despereaux cried, turning his head to the left. The light, he murmured, turning his head to the right. He called out to the knight. He shouted, "Who are you? Will you save me?" But the knight did not answer. "Tell me who you are," Despereaux shouted. The knight stopped swinging his sword, and he looked at Despereaux. "You know me," he said. "No," said Despereaux, "I don't." "You do," said the knight. He slowly took the armor off his head and revealed nothing, no one. The suit of armor was empty. "No, oh no," said Despereaux. "There is no knight in shining armor. It's all make-believe, like happily ever after." And in his sleep, dear reader, the small mouse began to cry. Oh my goodness. Should we stop there or should we read a little bit longer? I really want to leave a little longer because I don't want to stop on such a sad spot. Let's read chapter 36, What Mig Carried. And while the mouse slept, Roscuro put his plan into effect, his terrible plan. Would you like to hear, reader, how it all unfolded? The story is not a pretty one. There is violence in it and cruelty. But stories that are not pretty have a certain value too, I suppose. Everything, as you well know, having lived in this world long enough to have figured out a thing or two yourself, cannot all be sweetness and light. Listen, this is how it happened. First, the rat finished once and for all the job he had started long ago. He chewed through Gregory's rope all the way through so that the jailer became lost in the maze of the dungeon. Late at night, when the castle was dark, the serving girl, Migrisau, climbed the stairs to the princess's room. In her hand, she carried a candle. In the pockets of her apron were two very ominous things. In the right pocket, hidden in case they should encounter anyone on the stairs, was a rat with a spoon on his head and a cloak of red on his shoulders. In the left pocket was a kitchen knife, the same knife that Migrisau had used to cut off the tail of a certain mouse. They were the things, a rat and a knife and a candle that Mig carried with her as she climbed up the stairs. "Gosh," she shouted to the rat, "it's dark, ain't it?" Yes, whispered Roscuro from her pocket. "It is quite dark, my dear." "When I'm a princess," began Mig. "Shh," said Roscuro. "May I suggest that you keep your glorious plans for the future to yourself? And may I suggest further that you keep your voice down to a whisper? We are, after all, on a covert mission. Do you know how to whisper, my dear?" "I do," shouted Mig. "Then please," said Roscuro, "please institute this knowledge immediately." "Gore," whispered Mig. "All right." "Thank you," said Roscuro. "Do I need to review with you our plan of action?" "I got it straight right in my head," whispered Mig, and she tapped the side of her head with a finger. "How comforting," said Roscuro. "Perhaps, my dear, we should go over it again one more time just to be sure." "Well," said Mig, "we go into the princess's room, and she will be sleeping and snoozing and snoring, and I will wake her up and show her the knife and say, 'If you does not want to get hurt, princess, you must come with me.'" And you will not hurt her, said Roscuro. No, I won't, because I want to live so that she can be my lady-in-waiting when I become the princess. Exactly, said Roscuro. That will be her divine comeuppance. Gore, said whispered Mig. Yes, her divine comeuppance. Mig had, of course, no idea what the phrase divine comeuppance meant, but she very much liked the sound of it, and she repeated it over and over herself until Roscuro said, and then, continued Mig, I tells her to get out of her princess bed and come with me on a little journey. Ha, said Roscuro, a little journey, that's right. Ha, I love the understatement of that phrase, a little journey. Oh, it will be a little journey, indeed it will. And then, said Mig, who was now coming to her favorite part of the plan, we take her to the deep downs and we give her some long lessons on how to be a serving girl. And we gives me some short lessons on how to be a princess. And when we is all done studying up, we switch places. I gets to be the princess and she gets to be the maid. Gore. Reader, that is the very plan that Roscuro presented to Mig when they first met. It, of course, was a ridiculous plan. No one would ever, not for one blind minute, mistake Mig for the princess or princess for Mig. But Miggery Sow, as I pointed out to you before, was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And reader, too, she wanted so desperately to become a princess. She wanted, oh, how she wanted. And it was because of this terrible wanting that she was able to believe in Roscuro's plan with every ounce of her heart. And the rat's real plan was, in a way, more simple and more terrible. He intended to take the princess to the darkest, deepest part of the dungeon. He intended to have Mig put chains on the princess's hands and her feet. And he intended to keep the glittering, glowing, laughing princess there in the dark forever. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my goodness, we're going to stop there. We're going to stop there. So much drama. We'll find out how this continues another time. Kisses now. For Louis, for Florence, goodbye, my lovelies.